Sorry about the dark video. It's an audio recording, I guess. I really wanted to make a video today. It was the yartzeit of Rabbi Avigdor Miller. I remember I wrote at the time of Rabbi Miller's Batira, at the time of Rabbi Miller's death, how his yartzeit is Hod Shebekura, and he was a gibor, and he had Hod. He was a kohen from Aaron. A kohen is the midah of Hod. Sorry if I'm using Kabbalistic terms right now. And I remember meeting Rabbi Miller. It was a big blessing to have met him, to receive his blessing. And he was a man who was just, I remember someone was describing him shortly after his passing as a shtika minna. He was a piece of faith. He was a living, breathing piece of faith. His whole being was just simple Jewish Torah-dik faith. And he was such a brilliant teacher of faith, of how to have faith in God, how to believe in God, how to believe in Torah. He was just a simple, old-fashioned Haredi rabbi from America who learned in Europe. He originally learned in YU, and then he went to Slobodka, and he came back to America to be a rabbi. But not just, so many people like me, just regular rabbis. We're lucky that we're blessed to be able to serve regular lay people and to minister to them and to offer pastoral services and to pastor them. But Rabbi Miller took regular lay people and made them into Torah scholars, made them into Talmudic scholars, taught them how to learn, not just to, like my Rosh Hashiva, who was Rosh Kol there, but in Young Israel of Rugby by Rabbi Miller. My Rosh Hashiva, L'chaim, Moshe Lazarus Shlita, he said, most Rabbanim, they give a Gemara shir, they give a class in Talmud, a lecture, and the guys are sitting there half asleep. And Rabbi Miller would say, after he gave the lecture, every few minutes he would stop, and he would have everybody who was listening read out loud the Talmudic passages that they just studied, because he had understood how Chazal teach, what it says in the Torah. It says in Deuteronomy, it's in your mouth and your heart to do it. That it's the power of auto-suggestion. That's what he always spoke about. How we should say out loud, I love you, Hashem. I love you, God. And thereby be working on fulfilling that mitzvah of you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And he said, all right, you might not love God like King David loved God, like David HaMelech loved God. Excuse me. But you're gonna learn to love God. And he was an incredible person. He was politically active. He was real right-wing politically and real right-wing religiously. He was a creationist. He, fought against the theory of evolution with both fists. He taught about how we're supposed to believe in the Torah, how we're supposed to accept the truth, that the Torah is true, and so forth. He was a fantastic, amazing person, Rabbi Miller. And so, all of his books are in English. I mean, they publish now in Hebrew, his commentaries and things, but the things that he published in his lifetime. But, so I highly suggest, books like Sing You're Righteous, Rejoice, O Youth, his Bible commentaries, his history books, all of which were for the purpose of teaching Torah ideology, and his many thousands of lectures and tapes, some of which you can find snippets of on YouTube. I really highly recommend. And today was his yartzeit. He passed away, I guess, 2001. So it's been 18 years since we lost Rabbi Miller. And I remember him, he was in his 90s and his beard was still black, a little bit gray. That's how healthy he was. He was a health nut too. He was a vegetarian, which I'm not. And why was he a vegetarian? Very interesting reason. He said in Europe and in America until not too long ago, the custom was every woman would salt the kosher meat. You'd get meat from the butcher that wasn't salted yet, and the wife at home would salt the meat herself at home. And then the custom became, no, you don't salt the meat at home. They salt it for you at this, at the usually the slaughterhouse does it. I remember hearing an interesting story of the Brisker Rav. Maybe I should tell the story. But anyway, he felt that his wife always salted the meat, but now he doesn't. It's not available anymore. So he didn't want to. You could still go to some places and find unsalted meat and go through that, but most people didn't do it. Now it's almost impossible. Now you can't even get unkoshered liver. Almost, most people kosher their own livers. It's almost impossible to get an unkoshered liver, which is fine. Nowadays people, they don't know as much as they used to. But that's how it was. My papa, Allah Shalom, she said she remembers salting her own meat. People don't know, where's this term kosher salt come from? What's that about? Kosher salt, it's because you need the coarse salt to draw the blood out. You're not allowed to eat blood, the Bible says. So we don't eat blood, so we actually salt all of our meat to remove the blood. And there's a whole process. You salt it, you soak it, and all these things, and then you can eat it because all the blood was removed. So that's part of the story now. So then he didn't want to put his wife through a more difficult situation, so he just stopped eating meat, even on Shabbos, whatever it is. That's what he did. Kalav Rebbe Shlita didn't get a Torah from him this weekend. I hope he's okay. But he asked his Chutin, the Visions of Rebbe Zatzal, why he didn't eat meat. And he said he didn't have any particular reason, but he mentioned a few reasons. So there certainly were tzaddikim who were vegetarians. So I can't say that it's wrong to be vegetarian. Personally, for me, it's not. For a while, I was not eating behemoth flesh. For a while, I didn't eat fleischiks during the week. Then for a while, I didn't eat behemoth flesh when I was younger. A lot of these extreme things, the no meat during the week, that was more or less just because I didn't really have access to kosher meat, so I just saved it for Shabbos. Especially when I was first starting to keep kosher. But for a long time I didn't eat any behemoth meat, and now I eat meat quite often, probably too much, but maybe I should tone that down a bit. But but on the other hand, there's no reason, to be strict. I was a lot more extreme when I was younger, and I realized it's not such a chachma and all these things. A lot of these things are good to try for a little while, and then once you reach a certain point, you can go back to normal. You know, I think that's a wise approach. Something I wanted to talk about, but this video is 10 minutes long. It's long enough. I should probably stop while I'm ahead. There was something totally different that I meant to talk about, and instead I spoke about Rabbi Miller. Anyways, Chusig Elenu, he should be a good debater. You know, he had so many insights on politics and things that people don't realize. He spoke about Watergate, and he said Johnson, LBJ, did much worse things than Nixon ever did, but the left and the media attacked Nixon, because Nixon was supporting things that were more moral and ethical than what the Democrats were supporting. And someone asked Rabbi Miller, but wasn't Nixon a little bit of anti-Semite? He said, what are you talking about? He's like, first of all, don't have such high expectations. You know, that's not what we're talking about. We don't have to be concerned with how much does somebody love Jews. We have to be concerned with, does someone live up to the biblical morals and ideals that God entrusted us with? It all comes from God. But the concepts of the Bible, we are the forebearers. We're the ones that God entrusted to bring the Bible to the world, to bring these types of ethics to the world, to the point where today, Rabbi Miller spoke about the type of horrors. You know, people imagine that the East is, you know, the Buddhists and the Hindus, they're all so peaceful and holy, and you know, of course, theologically we have issues with them, but as far as their ethics and morals, they're so high and holy. And he said he pointed out things that's not true. And even today, you know, you have Hindu extremists, Hindu nationalists who could sometimes be violent. That's who killed Gandhi, was a Hindu nationalist. But the fact of the matter is, Rabbi Miller didn't really explain this as much, but the fact of the matter is, it's Christianity that helped temper down all of the pagan religions that exist, and the polytheistic religions, meaning not fighting with them over theology, but fighting with them over the basic tenets of don't murder, don't steal, these types of things. And these things came into the pagan religions. You talk to a Wiccan, you talk to an Odinist, you talk to a Satanist. They have a certain level of ethics and morals, and these things come from Christianity, which comes from Judaism. Again, Rabbi Miller didn't exactly say that, but the fascinating thing is that Rabbi Miller, as much as he criticized Christianity in certain things, he put his hechsher, for lack of a better term, his seal of approval on Christian creationist ministries. He said, write to the Creation Institute in Texas, and they'll give you all kinds of information scientifically proving the biblical account of creation. And again, that might, you know, I understand there, even within the Orthodox Jewish world and within the Christian world, different approaches to these questions. But we should remember that, yes, there is at least this one voice in the Jewish world, Rabbi Avigdor Miller, who's a staunch creationist, as much as Ken Ham. You know, he's that type of creationist. He's not a Christian, of course. Yeah, obviously Ken Ham is a big Christian, but Rabbi Miller was a creationist like Ken Ham. And I know people make fun of Ken Ham. I don't make fun of Ken Ham. You know, I listen with open ears. You know, that's a big problem with the left. They won't listen to anybody. I might not agree with everything Ken Ham has to teach, but we don't really know, and it doesn't really matter that much, at least in Judaism. I would say in Christianity it matters a little bit more, theologically speaking, that there was no death before the fall. In Judaism, that is a teaching, that there was no death before the fall, before the original sin. Again, our concept of original sin is different than the Christian concept of original sin, but we still have a concept of original sin. It's just different. It means something different theologically than it does to most Christians. But essentially what it means is basically what it says biblically, is that people were not mortal before the sin and they became mortal after the sin. And, a certain I remember when I used to speak at Professor Smith's class, he said, how do you understand when in Genesis it says, for on that day you shall die if you eat from the tree? And they didn't die on that day. I said, well, it's understood that basically that means they became mortal, but in the biblical sense, the Bible says 1,000 years are as one day to God. And Adam died in 930 years. He was 930 years old when he died. So he's less than 1,000 years old. So he died on that day, within that millennium. And the interesting thing is, where did the 70 years go? And who could we find in the Bible who was 70 years old when he died? David, King David. So the rabbis say that Adam gave 70 years to David. Again, is that a true, literal, historical fact? Or is that merely a legend that has a deep mythological teaching, not in the sense of a fairy tale? The way, our word for Agada, it's not like the modern Zionists say Agada means like a fairy tale. Agadata is something that's very sacred, that the way the Tanya says is that the secrets of the Torah are concealed in the Agadata, the Agadic, in the mythos of the Talmud. Doesn't mean a history lesson. It means it's something much deeper than a history lesson. And the thing is why study history also? Like Rabbi Miller taught us history for the sake of teaching ideology. And the same thing is with all kinds of history. I mean, if you read Glenn Beck's history books, very similar in their approach to Rabbi Miller's history books. Glenn Beck wrote a book about George Washington and about being George Washington. That meaning that we can learn an ethical, moral teaching from studying the life of George Washington. And to be honest, I consider, until I read that book, I didn't realize who George Washington was. And I see him as almost a saintly figure. He wasn't Jewish, but I see him as a great spiritual leader, in addition to being a great military leader, a great moral leader, a great ethical leader, a type of a holy man. A type of, and the same way, even if Jefferson and Franklin weren't the most chaste and holy people, but they were sages. They were men of great wisdom. They were men who, all of them, lived and witnessed God's providence in a profound way. And so, these are the type of things. I don't know. What else do I want to talk about? It's 20 minutes already. I think it's long enough. Coming up to Rosh Chodesh. It's a funny thing I saw on Facebook, and I reposted it, and I said it's funny because it's true. I saw someone posted from Monty Python. Nobody ever expects the Spanish Inquisition, right? And they posted there, and it said in Hebrew, I don't remember exactly the Hebrew idiom that they used there, but basically nobody ever expects Machar Chodesh. Machar Chodesh is a reference to a Bible passage that we read liturgically anytime when the Rosh Chodesh, essentially the first or sometimes the last day of the month, falls on a Sunday. Unless the last day of the month and it is sanctified as Rosh Chodesh is on a Saturday, then we read whenever Rosh Chodesh is on Shabbos, we read the last chapter of Isaiah. But if the next day is Rosh Chodesh, then we read Machar Chodesh, and we don't always read. And if it falls on Saturday and Sunday, so then we read the first and last verses of Machar Chodesh after. In some synagogues, it's not. After we read Isaiah, Hashemayim Kis'i, the heaven is my throne, from the last chapter of Isaiah. But this Machar Chodesh, that's from Samuel, where King David didn't show up at the feast with King Saul, and they said, tomorrow is the new moon, is the new month, and so. And so we read that, and the funny thing was like, when I saw that, I was like, this is the third week in a row we're doing Chok Yisrael, reading Achrei Mos, and I read the Haftarah for Achrei Mos, and I realized, I'm not even going to get to read the Haftarah for Achrei Mos. Machar Chodesh, tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, so it's kind of cute, Nobody ever expects Machar Chodesh. I totally forgot that it's Rosh Chodesh. I knew Sunday and Monday was Rosh Chodesh, especially as a chaplain dealing with the Ramadan is coming. So and so I have to we have to get ready for Ramadan, and then this year Ramadan is ER, and so it's interesting. By the Muslims, they still do Kiddush HaChodesh like we do. We used to do. We don't do it anymore. We have a set calendar. When Mashiach comes, when we have the Sanhedrin, then we'll go back to Kiddush HaChodesh. But in Islam, maybe this day is Ramadan, maybe that day is Ramadan. We don't know yet. It's kind of how we have Sveika D'Yoma. And so it's interesting, we have the same thing as Sveika D'Yoma, and they have a Sveika D'Yoma, and so all of it's quite fascinating. So we're really not that different, and again, it goes back to what I was saying politically. I mean, why am I so mad at Ilhan Omar? What's so upsetting about her? I can forgive her for being anti-Semitic. That's part of her culture. I could forgive her even if she had said this about some guys did some things and didn't go and cry about what happened in New Zealand as this horrible, horrible tragedy, and it is a horrible, horrible tragedy. But the fact of the matter is, even, more Muslims were killed in September 11th than in New Zealand. So, but what I cannot forgive her for is how could she say Muslims are treated like second-class citizens in America? That's ridiculous. that's so offensive because she's in the Congress and she wears her hijab in Congress, and good for her. I don't have a problem with wearing a hijab. And I'd rather, but Joe Lieberman's never said I'm a second-class citizen because I can't wear a yarmulke in the Senate. He just didn't wear a yarmulke. When he's in the street, he wears a yarmulke. He was at work, he didn't. And I'm not saying, and I understand there's a difference between a yarmulke. The same thing, I wouldn't expect a frum woman not to cover her hair if she's a congresswoman. No. There's a difference between wearing it, just like in Islam. You don't have to wear a kufi all the time. And some people wear all the time. Some people wear when they pray. Some people, it's kind of similar in Judaism and Islam with that. But you could compare the two, very similar. I think kufi is related to the word kippah, isn't it? It's very similar. We can respect each other, but this type of disrespect, especially disrespect to America, to say something like that, Muslims are treated like second-class citizens. How dare she say that when she's in the Congress? She's not. And first of all, nobody's a second-class citizen in America unless you make yourself a second-class citizen. Everybody is equal in America. Equality. We're not looking for equality of outcome, but we have equality. Under the law. But if anybody's a second-class citizen, it's Donald Trump is a second-class citizen. That the way the Democrats treat him, that Hillary Clinton, and all of us are, that Hillary Clinton can get away with what she did, all the crimes she committed, because she's Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump did nothing. He did nothing wrong. All he did was beat Hillary Clinton and really make this country better. And they make him into some kind of criminal. And now they want to make William Barr into some kind of criminal? Are they out of their minds? What's going on here? It goes back to what Rabbi Miller said. They can't bear the fact that somebody's fixing this country. And so that's why they attack him. They attacked Nixon for no reason. Nixon didn't deserve what he got because they all do it. Obama, every day in the Obama White House was a Teapot Dome scandal on steroids. But he got away with it because he was Obama. That's who's second. Republicans are second-class citizens. We're treated like pariahs. We're treated like there's something wrong with us, and it's not fair. But you know what? We work for a living. We don't have time to go and complain. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We'll see you later.